by DJ Anubis.
And DJ Neko.
We are here and guested by Mr. Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast. Man, I have to say, of all the guests that Samurai has, you are an enigma because I've been waiting to do this interview with you. So thank you for being a part of this, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So basically, just going to give you some questions, interview about the guy behind the personality on YouTube. And first, why don't you just tell people who you are and what your channel's all about?
Yes, I'm Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast. And basically, my channel just covers movies, mostly recommendations for movies on, a variety of different countries within Asia, mostly East Asia, like Japan, China, South Korea, and then some of the Southeast Asian countries like Thailand and that. What
made you want to do this YouTube, like actually go into the YouTube and actually talk about this particular genre of film and cinema?
I think it was basically a few things. The first thing was that, I used to frequent a lot of message boards back in the day, back in the late 2000s. And then, after I started really getting into these movies, which was right around like 2005. And one thing I noticed is that there's a lot of like misconceptions regarding what movies are produced in these countries. And this is especially true for Asian horror films. And that was the primary reason why I started the channel, is that I wanted to kind of create a little library of recommendations, which is why I started my Asian horror playlist. So I would go through chronologically all these Asian horror films so that I could have something on the internet that could show people that, like, not all Japanese horror films have ghost girls with wet hair over their faces.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the number one reason. Yeah. And then the number two reason was that I think that this particular region needed a little bit more exposure. So that's basically it.
That's pretty cool, though. Yeah, I think you're right, though. That's an area that not many people know too much about outside of what you just said about, like, The Ring or The Grudge and stuff like that, where it's pretty much ghost lady.
It almost feels like it's their I don't want to say stigma, but it's that everybody looks at the Asian horror and that's all they're thinking of. It's multidimensional. It's not just one thing that they cover. And I've noticed that even with like Asian martial arts movies too, because everybody just thinks it's like the cheesy martial arts movies, but we've seen so many great movies come out. I mean, even recently that we've watched that aren't just these cheesy with the bad wigs and everything.
Yeah, they're not so dated anymore.
Yeah.
And that got me to thinking a little bit. How do you feel about, like, because it seems like ever since The Ring, like, there's been a mass market for America to, like, redo all these Japanese movies that they're putting out there. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I think, a lot of them. A few collaborations I did with a few guys back a few years ago. We went through all of the remakes, the American remakes of Asian horror films that we saw. And it seemed to, like, kind of taper out a little bit in the 2010s. The worst was like the late 2000s.
Right.
But it did get, it was kind of a money grab. I think there were a few good ones along the way, but for the most part, it's just they were kind of a waste of my time, I thought. So I really didn't enjoy many of those.
I agree with you. I think they were just like trying to capitalize on The Ring, because that's, I feel like, what kind of kicked it off and made everybody interested in seeing Asian horror movies. So they're like, okay, well, if we can remake The Ring, what else can we do and how can we make money doing it?
The Grudge.
Yeah, The Grudge.
Dark Water.
Dark Water. Yeah.
So, yeah, it just, I'm kind of the same way. There are some, like, I thought The Ring remake and The Grudge were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, like, surprisingly enough, Dark Water, even though Jennifer Connelly was in the remake, I actually enjoyed the original more than that one. So just depends on the director and, how good it is and whatnot. So are you married or have a girlfriend or anything?
I am free on the market.
You are.
Ooh, can we, what is it? Swipe right? Can we swipe right?
Yeah.
So, what do your friends and family think of what you do on YouTube? Like, how do they react to what you're doing?
Well, they seem to like it. I guess
That's awesome.
they kind of respect it, I guess. You know, we don't really talk about it that much, even though I hang out with my family and friends quite a bit in my free time. We usually do other stuff, but we'll occasionally bring up movie discussions and things like that. And they, you know, they'll come to me if they see a movie that I've covered, and they'll, you know, if they like it, they'll tell me. So it's pretty nice.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
That is really nice. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Because we're so into metal, there's not a lot of our family who are like, yeah. Most of the time it's like, ooh, no, stay away.
Unless it's like rock or something.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like Ozzy, that it's like ubiquitous. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we know Ozzy.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed when I'm watching your videos, and I guess the first thing I should ask you is, do you speak Japanese or any like other languages?
I do not. I do
Really?
not. Only very, very little Japanese, just a few phrases here and there.
I asked that because like when I'm watching your videos, like they're pronouncing these names, and like I would butcher the hell out of them, but you make them sound like you've got it right down to how it's pronounced. So I'm pretty amazed by that.
I've successfully fooled you. If you ask me, like Japanese, maybe I'm a little bit better. I'm getting better. But Chinese, I have no idea. And
yeah,
Korean,
the only thing I know in Chinese is "shei," which is thank you. Like that's it. That's all I know.
Yeah, but I mean, he's just so confident of this, like, you know, this actress, and he just goes on. I'm like, how can you do that? Like, it's crazy.
It would be nice. I would bring this up. It would be nice because Japanese, when they Romanize it with English letters, it's close to phonetic. Whereas the other languages, it's just like, Tsui. Oh, well, his name is Tsui Hark. No, it's Choi Hark. Like you can figure it out just by looking at the letters, you know?
Yeah, I was, I don't know. I was going to ask you because if you did speak another language, you ever see that guy on YouTube, Yao Man in New York City?
I don't know. I don't think so.
He's a guy. He knows like all these different languages, mainly Chinese, because he's married to a Chinese woman, and he goes around to different countries, and he starts out by playing like kind of like the dumb American.
Oh.
But then he starts rippling off his languages, and he does like some really obscure stuff, like Native American stuff that you just wouldn't even think. But once he starts rolling, they're like, oh, "You can speak our language; it's so amazing!" And he's like really good. And he apparently learned online, so it wasn't even like he went to classes for it. So it's pretty fun to watch him do that stuff.
It's amazing. I've tried to learn other languages, and I like downloaded the apps, and I've studied. I've never been successful, and I travel so much for my work that I try to get at least like a couple of conversational things. And I think it was like 2.5 years ago, I was in Taiwan, and I'm like on Google Translate, and I'm like, do you see this? And then it's, you know, written in Chinese, and they're like, so that's how I communicated with a lot of people, because in Taiwan, the only people who really know English are like main hotels and the airport. When you're just kind of like walking around, it's like, I would like a coffee, and they're like, and I'm like, coffee. So it's kind of fun though. I do wish I had the ability to pick up languages the way he was talking about that guy. I don't know. I'm a dumb American.
I think the only languages I really picked up were like Spanish, and that was all the bad words. So I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on your Facebook page to check out some of your photos because I needed something for my little overflay anyway. But I did see you had a bunch of pictures from Band-Maid, and I know you really like them.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your obsession with them. Plus, is it just like Japanese stuff that you listen to in the rock and metal stuff, or do you have like broader taste?
Because I'm such a movie guy now, I don't explore a lot of music. So I like cycle through a lot of the same stuff. Like in my collection, I have a physical collection still. I still buy.
We do too.
And basically, like I would listen to. There's a Canadian artist by the name of Christy Thirsk, Thirsk, and she's probably my favorite because she dabbled in alternative. She did collaborations with Delirium, which is like real like world like. Weird music, and then she did her own like pop stuff. So I like her probably the most. And then Band-Maid's probably number 2. and then KMFDM is actually probably number 3.
Really? I love that.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I get a little German, Japanese, and Canadian mix there.
Yeah, you're like all over the spectrum there.
Yeah.
Well, what drew you to Band-Maid the most? Like, did you just come across them by accident, or?
Yeah, because I first started getting into Japanese music through the movies, and it would be like the musical scores for some of their films I really love. And then I started listening to some of the music from the movies as well, and then I got into some specific artists, but I never really had a huge collection of a Japanese artist. And then I, every once in a while I go on YouTube and I'll type in Japanese rock bands, and they came up in like some random playlist, and immediately I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And then it just steamrolled from there.
Now, did you ever like test the waters with like J-pop, like baby metal and stuff like that, or is that just not your thing?
I do like baby metal. I have their albums. They're good because they're weird enough to be a little different.
Right.
But like, AKB48 and stuff like that, I don't know, I can't really get into that.
What was that Japanese metal band while I was away, he was doing a show and I was listening to the podcast. It was he watched what was it? The documentary that you watched about the Japanese metal band. I can't remember.
It's X-Japan.
X-Japan.
They're from they're old school, like 80s and
you might
90s.
really like them. I mean,
it's more
the music is so good.
Yeah, they're a little bit more hard rock, but they're really, really talented. A little bit of progression in there, but you'd appreciate it, I think.
There seems to be kind of a healthy underground rock metal scene in Japan, I think. It's pretty neat.
Well, it's really interesting because, like, I remember for myself, like, in the late 80s, early 90s, when metal was kind of dying out and grunge was starting to take over, some of the bands, like, one of my favorite bands from San Francisco was Law's Rocket. And they kind of went over to Japan for a few years, and they said it was just crazy for them over there, even though they weren't so big over here anymore.
It kind of carried over.
Japan is every band that I've heard that plays over in Japan, even if they're American, they're like those fans are nuts. Like they just go crazy for it, and it's a good thing because like they're really. But of course, David Hasselhoff is really big over there too.
He's in Germany too. Like David Hasselhoff is an international celebrity. So
Knight Rider's still entertaining. I watched it again recently.
We do too.
Still entertaining.
We watch it. One man.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff from the 80s I can't let go of.
I work with a lot of people from around the world, and one thing that they said to especially the Europeans, the stuff that Americans like kind of like, it's almost like we will stop liking something, but it'll be kind of held over for a long time, especially like disco. We all know disco kind of died out in the early 80s, like when I was a baby, but it went on in Europe until like the 90s, and then like in the 90s the 80s stuff kind of picked up and carried over. So it's really interesting that like they'll find things and enjoy it after we're kind of done with it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So when it came to Godzilla and Company, because I know you did like a big old list a while back that I was like, yeah, I kind of agree with this here and there.
Here and there.
Were you like, was it like a childhood thing with you, or is it Godzilla was something more recent?
It was actually kind of more recent. Like the only ones that I got to see were the ones on TV, and I only remember seeing like the Showa era films on TV. Mm-hmm. Like Smog Monster, stuff like that.
Right.
And that's what got me into it. And then, I got really busy with stuff. And then once I started getting back into like movies in the mid 2000s, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll, rewatch those 6 Godzilla films. And I looked online, I'm like, holy crap, they got making them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All the way through to the 2000s. Like, when did this? Like, I had no idea they made so many. So then I went through and I watched all of them again, and that was kind of that was crazy.
Yeah, that's actually true for me a little bit. I had seen them as a kid, but I think when it got to be like around after 1985, I was like, well, they probably didn't make it anymore. So by the time Godzilla 2000 came out, I was like, okay, they're back to it. But then I realized in the 90s they had like a slew of other films. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that. So it was pretty interesting on that level. Do you see like a difference, like a major difference between the directors that direct Asian movies as opposed to American? Like, is there any like structure or script writing that stands out to you when they do that?
Um, Maybe because their budgets are smaller, they tend to have a little bit more of like indie vibe to them. Maybe that I think I just watched a special feature on Juzo Itami when I watched The Funeral, the Criterion release, and his wife said that he would always say, I think it was like with a lack of budget, like you just got to be creative.
Mhm.
So because their budgets are smaller, they do things maybe a little bit differently, like more visual communication, stuff like that, like different ways of communicating things to the viewer. So I find some of their stuff's kind of indirect, maybe
Yeah.
a little hard to get into if you're not like I don't know, like really looking for it. But I found it to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any like favorite directors currently?
I would say Shinya Tsukamoto's number one for me from Japan. So he did Tetsuo and a lot of that stuff. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is another big one.
Kurosawa.
I would say for Korea, Ji Woon Kim is really big for me. And then in Hong Kong, Johnny To is probably my favorite.
Now, what about actors and actresses?
Yeah, there's my favorite actress is probably Zhou Shun from China. She's high on the list. Japan is tough. There's a lot of good actresses. Maybe I'll go classic. Setsuko Hara, maybe from the Ozu's films. I always liked her.
All right.
And then Korea, I always say Im Soo Young from A Tale of Two Sisters.
Oh, that's a good
Oh
movie.
yeah, that is a good movie.
Yeah,
I do like that movie.
Yep. Now, what would be like your top 5 movies of any genre right now in Japanese or whatever Asian movies?
Well, actually, that is a little easier. A Tale of Two Sisters is number 1. Cure is number 2. I would say the Chinese romance film Green Tea would be number 3.
I don't know that one.
No, he has a lot of stuff that he reviews that like.
I did South Korea, Japan, China. The Raid 2 from Indonesia. And then I'm trying to think of one more from like another country. There's a Taiwanese movie called The Passage that I really liked from the mid 2000s. So I'll throw that in there.
So do you ever get into like I know you said you're doing like a lot of East Asian, but do you ever get into like the Filipino genre too? Because I know they're Asian, but like they're kind of like separate themselves, and I know it's very weird because they're an island nation, so they're almost kind of like by themselves and so separate with everything. And I didn't know if you got into any Filipino movies, or I mean, I don't even know if they do a lot of horror. They do a lot of poppy stuff down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've mostly avoided their like romantic comedies and stuff, which they produce a lot of.
That's what they produce a lot of.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if they did any horror movies that caught your eye.
Yeah, they have done. I've seen like a few dozen maybe Filipino movies, mostly horror and thriller films with some action mixed in. There was one called Birdshot that might still be on Netflix, and that was awesome. That was like a dramatic thriller. I'm pretty sure that was Filipino. And then there was a movie called The Road from 2011 that was a good horror flick. Feng Shui from back in the day was good. So they've done a handful of good ones.
All right, I'm writing this down on my notepad because I really do like trying to find different things. Like we check out everything that people recommend to us, but like for me, every time I watch something that's Filipino, it's exactly what you said. It's a romantic comedy. It's something like poppy. It's something cute. But if there is like a really good Filipino horror movie, I'd love to check it out.
I got my Excel sheet out just in case.
Oh my gosh!
Let me go to the.
I'm more prepared than I am.
The Philippines. All right, I got my list here. So Birdshot.
Yeah, that's the one that
The Road.
Now, The Road's not the one that has Viggo Mortensen. That's a whole different one, right?
Yeah, no. This is like a really kind of interesting anthology style horror film that I think was available online. There was one I saw on YouTube called Kill Barbara with Panic from '95. I'm not sure if that's still available. Yeah, but there's a handful of it. And if you really want to go back, you can watch The Blood Drinkers from 1964.
Nice.
The reason I even asked this is, like I said, everything in the Philippines that I've experienced has always been very mainstream, poppy, and I didn't know if you had like dug deep and felt, saw anything that's like a little more gritty. And I appreciate this. I'm writing these down.
Yeah, should probably make a pick a week at some point.
Well, I mean, if Birdshot's and The Rotor are on Netflix or Tubi or one of those, we could definitely check it out.
Yeah. You spoke of Raid 2. I was going to try to do the 6 degrees of separation with Kazuki Katamara, and I couldn't come up with anything, but he's like probably one of my favorites because like I remember watching Godzilla Final Wars, and then I saw this movie called Killers, which I instantly loved and bought that movie. What other movies, if you can recall, that stars him, would you recommend that I check out? Because I really do like him as an actor.
First time I remember seeing him was in Azumi, which was like Japanese, samurai like action flick. I loved him in that because he was kind of like a half villain in that one.
Right.
He was in a Miike film called Yakuza Like a Dragon, which was pretty fun. That was
I love movie. That.
Nice.
What else was he in? Oh, he was in some other stuff too.
Yeah, his IMDb is like loaded with stuff that it looks like a lot of series too, which I just not really familiar with. But
yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah. So if you were to create your own movie,
oh my, it's pressure here.
What would it be? Like, what style? What actors and actresses would you like to have in it? How would you go about that?
If I was to create that, do I have to direct it though?
Not necessarily. It could be just your thoughts, your creativity.
I mean, I would like to do something like a Kiyoshi Kurosawa film, like the slow kind of philosophical art house film. Mm-hmm. But if I was going to do something more mainstream, I would do like I really like movies about school kids and teenagers. I just find it really interesting, like the coming of age stuff. And Japan and South Korea make a lot of really good movies like that. So I would do something like I would do almost like a teen, like witchcraft movie that was like serious. You know what I mean? That would focus on, there's like a South Korean horror series called Whispering Corridors that focused a lot on like school kid friendship. So I would have that as like the basis, but I would make it like a real serious, like witchcraft horror thriller.
That sounds pretty interesting.
I like that. And I think a lot of times, we see these coming of age movies because we see teen movies all the time, but they don't really take it seriously. It's almost like the same thing where it's like, recycle the story, rinse, repeat. And it would be nice to have something with a little bit of an edge. Mm-hmm. So you're going to write that, and then we'll send it away and make millions. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's have some fun. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So.
Oh no.
I don't know about, because like, again, this is your main genre of expertise. So taking guys like Samurai or Aaron Penn or even Joe Valley, what character in Asian cinema do they remind you of most?
Oh, you mean like Samurai Guy and
yeah.
Like,
ooh,
like if you were looking at them, who would they remind you of in Asian cinema?
Man, Aaron, I don't know. He doesn't have the same personality. The first guy I think of was Naoto Takanaka, who's like kind of a comedy type actor. I don't know. Maybe just the visual of the facial structure reminds me a little bit of him, even though the personality isn't like the same.
Right.
Samurai Guy, I'd have to go with like the. Oh man, I'm trying to think. What other Asian guy? Maybe like a. I'm trying to think of like a Japanese dude or like a. I can't think of anybody.
He's got a little bit.
He's his own guy.
He's got a little bit of anything because he's so funny. So you kind of think of him maybe as like a martial artist who's goofy, but then like he's also kind of looks badass. So
maybe even almost like a Toshiro Mifune type guy.
Right.
With a mohawk. Like, give him a mohawk. And then...
Or who was the guy that played Sub-Zero in Running Man? Do you remember the actor? He's pretty famous.
Oh, yeah. He was in The Perfect Weapon, too.
Yes.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, maybe.
That's so funny. So I have a very important question. How is your kitchen decorated right now? Because I always love your kitchen decor. You always have like the nice lights and candles and stuff.
Oh, it's pretty clean. I do have some.
That's famous word by a serial killer.
Some Blu-rays sitting on the counter that I got to process, but other than that, it's not bad.
I loved the Halloween, you had all the jack-o'-lanterns, and then Christmas, you had like the Christmas stuff out. You like, it's just all so perfect and like lined up, and then you have like that lovely brick. And
yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, well, if he's got a wife or somebody, she's probably got to be pretty annoyed that the kitchen's like taken up.
Yeah.
So what do you do outside of this hobby that you have? Like, what else do you do? Like, what kind of work, or
anything you'd like
hobbies?
to share that you can share?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm basically technically a CPA, but I work for like a bank, so I audit companies that we lend money to, and then for like other free time stuff. Well, I used to travel back in the day. That doesn't happen. Hopefully next year I'll get back out somewhere. Right. And then I spend a good amount of time with like my family and friends too.
That's awesome.
And lately, it's been getting intense because I started like a second hobby outside of movies, and it's like this board game called Gloomhaven, and it's this. Wow. It's almost like I've never played D&D before or whatever. Some people compare it to that, but some people who played a lot of it have compared it to like Euro style, like almost like a strategic puzzle type game. Okay. So you'll have your characters, you have your starting characters, and you're given like different scenarios. I got like 100 different scenarios in this thing, and you have to use cards, but you have to figure out like the best combination between you and your allies to get through like the scenario and to like defeat the enemy. So it's pretty like
a board game.
Yeah, it's kind of a board game. Yeah, it's physical.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's pretty large and expansive. So we've been playing that a lot lately.
No kidding. Yeah, I haven't. What's it called again?
Gloomhaven.
Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
Now, do you just play board games, or have you ever played like like Xbox or anything like that? World of Warcraft.
Oh, I think I have my Super Nintendo Entertainment System still set up.
Yeah!
Wow. Occasionally, I'll play some, Tecmo Bowl or Contra. Once a year, I go to my cousin's house for, we do like a Christmas marathon, and him and his wife play Gauntlet Dark Legacy once a year. They put their kids to sleep, and we play Gauntlet.
Yeah, we used to do that with a friend of mine. We'd be up all night. They'd be like, dawn be coming up. And...
yeah, the birds are chirping here. Like,
we're like, maybe we should go to bed. It's a little.
I love that you still have your Super Nintendo. I had my original Nintendo. I was in high school before it took a dump, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, so I just threw it away. But now, like, thinking I probably should have saved it. There's probably somebody who could have fixed it. But I got that thing when it came out back in the 80s, and I never upgraded. Like, I had friends who were getting Genesis and Super Nintendo, and I just had my Nintendo. And it was actually kind of cool because, the Nintendo games at one point were, $60 a piece, but when Super Nintendo and Genesis came out, you were able to get the used games so cheap. So that was like my thing. I'm like, I can get 100 brand new games and I can just keep playing, and this is great. I'll keep this forever. And we actually had it at my parents had a vacation house, so I had it there for like rainy days when you couldn't go to the beach or whatever. And one day it just took a crap, and we threw it. We went down to the dumpster and threw it away, and had a little Nintendo funeral for it. But I could not believe we had it. I mean, from 1987 to probably 99, and it got played a lot. I mean, there was many hours of Legend of Zelda played on that thing.
And that's the thing, is I think about recycling video games back into my rotation, but I would want to play my old games first, and I saved all of my PS2 games.
Look at you.
So I'm going to go through, I'm going to have to play all the Resident Evil and Silent Hill games again before I start anything new.
Silent Hill was so scary. I remember when it came out and playing the game, and I'm like, this is like a horror movie that I'm playing. It's really scaring me. Maybe I should like turn the lights on while I'm playing the video game. When did PS2 come out?
90s somewhere.
I think I was maybe a senior in high school, so 98. Does that sound right?
Probably.
Yeah, right around the turn of the century, yeah.
I remember the guy I was dating at the time got a PS2, and then all my friends got PS2, so we're playing games like nonstop, and then the Silent Hill games came out, and it was just... And Metal Gear was a big thing too, and Final Fantasy VII, like, we were just all over that.
See, that's my problem though, like now with games, because of the speed of the processors and everything else, like I went back to play Final Fantasy VIII, and it's just so slow. Like, even though they kind of like upgraded it, it was still the same format. So I'm waiting. I don't have patience for it anymore. I'm so used to everything more fast paced.
See, I haven't really played a lot of video games since I was like that late 90s, early 2000s, like when I was in college, and he's played video games like constantly. So for me, I'm like, it doesn't really bother me, but he has the new games and he's just kind of like, I don't know. Technology is amazing though, but nostalgia is a beautiful thing when you can pull something out and it reminds you of, whatever. I love it. I absolutely love it.
One thing about new games though, I watch my nephew play some new ones when they come over and visit. I don't like the game ethics anymore, because you're playing with people online, and I see it every single time. Same thing happens. Like my nephew will be playing NBA, whatever, 2020, whatever, or Madden, whatever, and he's playing with another dude online. Maybe he doesn't know. So if my nephew's winning at the end of the first quarter, the guy quits at the end of the first quarter.
Oh, what?
Yeah, this is how they do things now. And then, like, if my nephew's losing, he just keeps playing. You know what I mean? Because he wants to play the game. Or the other thing is you have all the microtransactions. So if mom and dad want to spend a few $100 to get you, you could just max out all your guys like immediately and just kill everybody.
That's not how it works. You're supposed to earn that shit. I was walking around in Final Fantasy VII for days trying to get my experience points because I needed golden chocobo.
Yep.
Well, I was playing one of my relatives, Adam, when he was younger.
Oh yeah. He's my little cousin. Like he's so much younger than me that I could be his mother. Like so.
But I was playing on like Madden football or something, and like look, I'm not the best player anyway. So like we're playing, and I'm scoring on him. Then I kick off, and he'd run it back for a touchdown. He did this like three times in a row. So like. I realized that there was no penalties in the game. We weren't playing with penalties.
He turned penalties off.
So I started kicking it out of bounds so he couldn't do that.
You're an asshole.
I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let you run it back anymore.
Yeah.
Kick it out of bounds. Okay, so has there been any like mainstream movies recently that you've seen? Like, Doctor Strange or Maverick or anything? Like, if you did, what'd you think?
I saw the new Spider-Man movie. I thought that one was pretty good. I liked that one.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised how much the older actors, the screen time they had. It was pretty nice to get a nice amount of screen time with them. I saw Shang-Chi. I liked like the first half more than the second. I thought it's kind of tailed off. What else? I saw some other stuff. Oh, I saw a movie called Cop Shop that was pretty cool too. With Gerard Butler. That was a good flick.
I love
maybe not entirely mainstream, but it was good.
No, I've heard of it. What was the premise of that though? I can't remember.
It's where I always forget his name. The guy from I can't think of his name. Oh, Grillo, Frank Grillo.
Okay.
He's like a slimy like con man, and Gerard Butler's coming after him to kill him. So he's like, well, he walks up to a cop and punches her in the face. He's thrown in prison because he's like, can't kill me now. But then freaking Gerard Butler crashes his car into a cop car. He gets thrown in jail. So they're in the same jail cell.
Oh my God.
And the movie starts like that. And it goes from there. I liked it. It was fun.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it. I haven't seen it.
But that sounds like something up our alley, trust me. Like, I love stupid like jokes and stuff like that too.
So what about any movies getting ready to come out? Are you excited for anything?
Oh, I'll definitely watch John Wick 4 and the new Mission Impossible movie, definitely.
Yeah, those look really good. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Maverick, I know you probably haven't seen that yet, but that was pretty amazing for me, really.
I want to see it now that I've heard a little bit about the behind the scenes, because I respect movies that are made that way, so I really should see it. I'll try to find some time.
I enjoyed it, and I mean, if you like Top Gun, you're gonna like Maverick. I mean, it's a very, if you like planes doing plane things, I read too, like a lot of the stuff, and Tom Cruise at the beginning makes a big statement, like it's all practical effects. It's not CGI. There's actual pilots doing these effects, so you're gonna get something like really amazing. It's going to blow your mind. I loved it. Of course, I'm always been. I like Tom Cruise, but I like Val Kilmer more, and they are so respectful to Val Kilmer in this movie because I don't know. Did you know he had throat cancer? And so they kept his character, strong. He's an admiral. Like they made him. Like they're very respectful to him.
They did the character justice.
Yeah, they gave his character justice, and they respected the actor too because they knew he couldn't really talk much, so they kind of like played that into his character.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Shang-Chi, and like I think one of the issues for her and I is that like now with like characters like that or Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, like it's very hard for me to get into these particular series and movies because I'm not too familiar with them. So like Strange, I knew sort of the backstory of WandaVision and everything, so it kind of all played into it. But like I think with you, Shang-Chi, I kind of liked it early on, but then like there was like this overabundance in CGI with like dragons flying around that I just wasn't really understanding too much. So I don't know about you. Are you more familiar with a lot of those characters that they're coming out now with?
I have not watched any of the TV shows, so I'm going to start falling behind, I think.
I haven't watched Moon Knight yet, and I really wanted to because I like that story, but I mean, it's already out, right? The whole series. So I'm behind already.
So what do you have coming up, like project-wise, for reviews and like any guest appearances?
I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent with my Asian horror playlist. Maybe do one of those every 2 months. I'm trying to bring back like my top 10 list too for like certain directors.
Yes.
And then
he really likes the top 10 list.
Yeah, and then
I get all my ideas from him. Like he'll list something, I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that, and he's like, yeah, it's here. Go find it. Go watch it.
Yeah. Those are two of the projects. I'm trying to get Corey and Ray back too for a collab. So we'll see.
I can't remember. Do you guest on Chaos's channel sometimes? I can't remember. I know you're on Aaron Pan occasion. At least you're on his chat. I seen you in there, but
yeah, I usually do Samurai Guy. It's weird to hit like a cold patch for the first few months of the year. Everybody was kind of busy,
right?
But I've got I might do one with Disconnected soon, and another one with Samurai Guy, and then that's it for now. And maybe the Artie Dance too. I'm going to do something with. So
right on. So how can people find you? Give them their info, where they can find you at.
Yeah, it's just the Asian Movie Enthusiast on YouTube. You could also probably find me on Twitter too, but I only post basically links to my my videos on there.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, sir, for being with us and doing this with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it was a blast. Just hang on. We're going to stop the recording and then we'll chat a little bit more.
All
Thanks
right.
again, buddy. Appreciate it.